Hey guys, Jay here with BTP. I'm going to quickly go over the proper mechanics and positioning for the good mornings, and we'll get into a little bit of the squats and deadlifts as well. I'm going to use a weighted bar just so you can see kind of my positioning a little bit better. I find once you have kind of the plates there, it's a little bit tougher depending on what angles we'll get at. So for the good mornings, the first thing you want to pay attention to is positioning, right? So we want to place it somewhere similar to where you'd have like a low bar in your squat, so it's not sitting on your neck. So if I have the bar here, right, if it's sitting on my neck in this position and I start going forward, all of that force is going to go into my neck, which it's not designed to handle that kind of load. So if I'm here, right, this is on my neck, this is on the top of my traps, I want to sink it a little bit lower. So for those of you that are accustomed to kind of doing a low bar squat, you should have it somewhere in that position. Now from here, I'm going to brace it with my lats. I'm just going to hold it into that pocket so that when I'm coming back into the good morning position, right, it's sitting a little bit on my shoulders, sitting on my traps rather than on my neck, especially when we're down in that bottom position. So when you get here, right, you want to make sure it's sitting comfortably as you're coming over. Okay. Now from there, what you want to think of, similar to the RDLs, or kind of the conventional deadlifts when you're starting, we want to worry about the hip hinge as the priority. So when we're holding on to the bar, we're going to hinge the hip back. So my core is staying nice and kind of neutral or tight, if you want to think of it that way. But I'm not fully flexed at all. I'm also not hyperextending my lower back, right? So I don't want to get into this position and try and drop back. I'm going to keep it in that neutral position as I hinge through the hip. So all of my movement here is coming from the hip, and you'll notice that the bar is in line with the middle of my foot. So it's not sitting on my heels because I'll fall backwards. It's also not sitting on my toes, so I'm not bombing everything forward. As your hips come back, your torso is going to drop, and you're going to find that kind of that happy range where you're on your midfoot. Now from here, we're going to use our glutes and hamstrings as well. But think of squeezing your butt in the bottom position. So you get down here, I'm going to squeeze the glutes to bring me back up. Now, I don't suggest doing the glute squeeze to push your hips forward, because what's going to happen with the weight, right? The weight can only come down, or sorry, the weight can only press down from gravity. So if I'm up tall trying to squeeze my glutes through it, all of this force is going to be pushing down on my rotator cuff, and it's going to be pulling back. So you want to start or finish in a slightly flexed position, right? And then again, come back down, reach the bottom, squeeze the glutes, and come back up. So we're staying slightly flexed on the top. We're not trying to push through as some people might feel inclined to do so. Same thing with the deadlift, right? So when you're doing your RDLs, right, whether you're doing sumo, right, so a big difference, sumo and then conventional. When you're coming back with your hips, right, when you're coming up, here you can squeeze your glutes pushing into the bar, but you don't want to hyperextend again, okay? So our goal isn't trying to lift up and pull back. Our goal here, squeeze the glutes, come up, come back down. Now if you're going all the way down to the ground, right, the height's going to kind of depend a little bit more on your anatomy, but again, we're keeping the hips as the primary mover, the back is staying neutral throughout, so we don't want to force any hyperextension, both from the top or from the bottom. Same thing applies for the squat. So let's say you're doing a high bar squat, I'm standing up nice and tall, I don't want to start by pulling my hip back and leaving my chest where it is, which is going to hyperextend my back. As my hip goes back, my torso is going to go with it, okay, in terms of tilting forward. So you're going to hinge, come down, and then come up. For those of you that do low bar, right, you're going to just stay higher up as you have to hip hinge a little more. If you're doing a high bar squat, right, you can come down and then come up a little bit differently. So those variations are going to be a little bit more personal, depending on which you prefer, which works better with your anatomy and your physiology. But what you want to pay attention to is there's not a lot of excessive movement through the back. So your core, your midsection should stay relatively level or in the same position throughout. If you're noticing a lot of hyperextending and then flexing, that's usually where a lot of the trouble comes in. So Pick the style of squat that works for you for the deadlifts and for the good mornings. And if you want to see me doing it with weight, just check any of the other videos. All right, give it a shot.